Happy Bringling! We at Bringle team would like to thank all the participants and listeners on the Bringle Blended Meetups platform for our 21 days business sustainability challenge and to the entrepreneurs who are watching it live on our YouTube channel Bringle Talks on the daily basis to ensure their business sustainability. Myself, Anshav Jain, founder of Bringle, is delighted to share a good news that we have automated the 8 out of 9 steps as released by Indian government advisory for the usage of video conferencing solution Zoom for the security concerns, and also have tested our own video conferencing solution as well, which is a made in India product. Any investor who would like to come forward and support us taking this widespread globally, reach out to us at info@bringleacademy.com. I would like to share Pulse of Wisdom from the topic Tangible and Intangible Outcomes. Joseph Sahib Yusuf from Singapore mentioned that the essence of humans is a relationship and connecting people which makes a person the human CRM. The best way to be a human CRM is to adopt the care and the taker model with active listening as part of the key feedback. John from UK shared that transpersonal leader has to be radical, ethical, authentic and caring. Leaders should bring sustainability by managing their emotions and ego. Ask yourself the question, what is the benefit of various stakeholders because of me? Eija from Finland spoke that do dare to do things in spite of frameworks. The weakness is not having enough dialogue. We need to talk, we need to meet, and not to be arrogant. At the same time, value everybody within the organization. Institutionalization of individual in philosophy versus individualizing the institution in real life is the key game changer. Creating partnership is a minimalist bridge for the next generation. Businesses and entrepreneurs, please upload your pitch decks at bringleacademy.com/course/business sustainability and do subscribe the YouTube channel Bringle Talks and watch the recorded live sessions on business sustainability every day. Keep bringling, keep growing.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Happy Bringling. Welcome once again. And we all at Bringle team, along with Women Lines, Solworks, Poonam Foundation, and Vardhan, would like to welcome all the participants who are there with us either on this Zoom call or they are watching it live on our YouTube channel, Bringle Talks. Thanks for joining there. Before we start today, I would like to share a small good news with everybody. Uh, while we had already automated 8 out of 9 steps which has been issued by the Indian government as an advisory to ensure data security for Zoom, for 5 of those points, almost 50% or 60% of those points were already automated and being taken care of, which were most critical. Rest other 4 points, around 3 points we have also automated into the platform. So if you have a Zoom subscription already, you can just get it integrated with Bringle platform and get the entire security with your user database and your recordings as well. The last point is basically with the host rights, and they can control it once they join the meeting and when everybody joins the meeting. So with this, I would also want to share one more aspect that we have today itself. We have just tested our own video conferencing solution, which we are trying to integrate that with Bringle platform. So anybody who would, we are looking for some more development and some more testings onto that and promotions and usage to widespread India and in other countries. So if anybody who is an investor and looking to support at this point in time, please reach out to us at info@bringleacademy.com and we'll be happy to support on this initiative in these times. With this, I would want to go back to the pulse of wisdom of the topic process focus. Abhijit Dandekar, who is Director Quality at OTS Elevator APAC, stated that standard process needs to be implemented, monitored, and aligned with the businesses. End result of process should be as per the customer, as they would pay only for the value-added activities. In any circumstances, process won't change, but the monitoring or managing the process will undergo a lot of changes. Sanjay, senior scientist at TCS, gave an example of Kumbh Mela and how 800 plus experts comes together to design a process to eliminate deaths and missing people. He had also shared a similar concept for smart cities as well. He mentioned about closing the social issues through process at mega level. Dr. Ajay Desai, World Book, Limca, Asia, and India Book record holder, mentioned that in next 10 years, everything is going to be changed from the technology perspective. India will benefit the most out of it, and technology is getting more attention today than earlier. I would also request businesses, entrepreneurs to please upload your pitch decks at bringleacademy.com/course/business sustainability, and do subscribe the YouTube channel Bringle Talks and watch the recorded live sessions, and make sure that your business sustains in these tough times. I would also like to add that we have increased the timeline on the huge demand, and we will come back to you on the same. Today's topic of our cross-border 21 days business sustainability challenge is tangible and intangible outcomes. And we have marvelous speakers, Yusuf from Singapore, John from UK, and Aya from Finland. And with this, I would like to request Charu to please introduce our today's speakers.
Thank you so much, Aisha. A very good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to whole bird community there. It's such a pleasure to welcome you all. The topic for today is value creation, and the subtopic is tangible and intangible outcomes. Jim Brown once said, "You don't get paid for the hour, you get paid for the value you bring to the hour." So let's hear from our experts what's their opinion about value creation. We have Joseph Sahab Yusuf. He's from Singapore. He is a human CRM, business growth strategist, building value-based lifelong relationship in sales, business development, marketing, and co-host of Create the Edge LinkedIn Live show. His experience is across multiple industries, across multiple geographies, in senior sales, management, strategy formulation, management consulting, go-to-market, financial, and investment advisory, and has spanned a career of over 15 years. He led team members through collaborating to co-create and redefine their approach to get the competitive advantage. Welcome, Yusuf, to the show. We have John Knights, co-founder and chairman of Leadership and Organization of Business Leaders who shape the best transpersonal leaders for the future. Welcome, John, to the show. He is a lead author, Leading Beyond the Ego, How to Become a Transpersonal Leader. John is recognized expertise in leadership development, people management, culture change, corporate strategy, organizational development, acquisitions, and joint ventures. It's such a pleasure to have you at the show today. And we have Aya from Finland. She is a Secretary General and has been a Director, International Affairs, Cumulus International Association of Universities and Colleges of Art and Design since 30 years. A global connector and advocate since 1990 for international education and research in art, design, and media. Having the passion to collegiate an interdisciplinary environment, she loves creating new and break barriers with business, industry, government, and NGOs, respecting the existing. Such a pleasure to have you, Aya, at the show. And myself, Charu Mehrotra, I'm founder of online magazine womenlines.com, which is listed in top 40 women's online magazine to follow in 2020. Do subscribe it, friends. So my first question goes to John. John, you have mentioned that your purpose is to create excellent transpersonal leaders. Can you throw light on it? You're on, yeah.
Yes, you can hear me now.
Yes.
We define a transpersonal leader as someone who is radical, ethical, authentic, and cares not only about performance, but also about sustainability and caring for other people. And the two essences of a transpersonal leader is, one is that they know how to manage their emotions, and two, which is really important in this world, is they know how to manage their ego. And one of the things that we as leaders often forget about is the impact of our ego on how we make decisions. So, for example, in our organization, we will be thinking about, as a leader, about, because it's human nature, about what is the benefit for me. And that is when we're ego driven. But what we need to do is to be thinking about the stakeholders in our organization. And I'm not just talking about the shareholders, but also the customers, the employees, the suppliers, the community, the planet. And when we make our decisions, we must be conscious. And sometimes we'll have conflict, and that will be when we need to discuss with other people, perhaps. But there's always a conflict between what is good for ourselves and what is good for other stakeholders. And the thing is that it's not inherently a bad thing to be thinking about what is good for me, but what is really important is that we have it at full consciousness, so we're aware of where we are. So I would say that is a sort of a brief explanation of transpersonal leadership. But one of the things that really I think one can relate to is something that Tolstoy said, the famous Russian author of War and Peace and also a social reformer. He said, everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change themselves. And so what is really important is, as a leader, we must be continually focusing on changing ourselves. In fact, Yusuf said earlier in the prelim that about, we're never perfect. We've always got to improve. And that is so important. The danger, particularly for leaders of organizations, is that they forget. They think that because they've got to the top, they don't need to learn anymore. But it's really important. And the most important thing to learn is about yourself and how you can improve, continue to improve and develop as a leader.
It's great insight, John. Particularly, in terms of as a leader, it's very difficult to curb the ego and to unlearn what we have learned. So I think that's a fantastic insight you have shared. You have worked with startups. What advice you give to new entrepreneurs and how they create a value in their role? Can you share some insights on that also, please?
Yeah, well, again, I think it's quite common for startups, with startups, that the individual focuses on the product. And often we forget about the importance of the people around you. The more you can get your team, assuming that you're more than one person, that you can get your team to feel ownership in that organization, and that you distribute the leadership, you share the leadership with these people, you make them feel that they have the ownership. And it's not just about shareholding, it's about, that it belongs to them, that whole feeling that belongs to them. And that will get the business side of that. I mean, one is the human side, but the business side of that is that if people feel ownership for something, they will put in discretionary effort. They'll put in more. If you pay people so much money and you give them a bonus if they achieve something, then that they will give you the job in return for what you're paying. If you get them to own the business with you, then they will provide that extra discretionary effort. And that's when you get the high productivity and the high performance.
Very true. I think all depends upon the connectedness people are having with the organization and how the leader is establishing that. You want to highlight something, Rashri?
Yeah, what John spoke, I was, heading HR for EDS, globally. And one thing I always liked about that organization, a lot of value for people. Even if person is terminated or if there is any kind of a separation is happening, still it was important for us as HR leaders to have respect and have his dignity in place. He is separating because there are certain things which are not matching with us as an organization, but he is not a human being which can be discarded, and his future should not be in a traumatized condition. I think when you look at your person who's separating also to that extent, you have created connect with people. When they are performing, you really reward, but when they are going, you maintain their dignity. I think this is something I have experienced, with this organization.
Yeah, that's
It's
a
amazing.
fantastic sharing.
Yes.
And it's very important also how together we are working as a team, and there is no difference and there's no line between the leader and the organization workers. So fantastic share. Thank you so much, John, for sharing that insight. Aya, my next question goes to you. You love to break barriers in business, industry, governments, and NGOs. How have you done it with your rich experience? Can you share your insights?
To do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I can speak. Okay. Remind where I come from academia, that is a challenge as such already. But over the years, I've been seeing that a big value for the next generation over the bridging academia is that there must be people that do dare to do things, even though there is a framework dictated by an institution like a university, that somebody dares to go beyond and contact other people. I think what I'm trying to say is the similar thing, thanks John already, people feeling ownership, that's extremely important. But then, I mean, jumping over a thing, I mean, I'm a bridge builder, that there are weaknesses in academia as well as on the other hand, on the side of NGOs and businesses, that there is not enough dialogue. There is not enough development. I'm not talking about industry dictating research, but I think it makes sense that we talk, we meet, we are not arrogant to another one. We value everybody within the organization. But then, hey, my question to everybody, may I pose one, is that how we can change the DNA of a human being that enable us to get more together and being able to share best practices, but also worst ones, share knowledge, and also feeling so that I'm earning, like John was saying, I'm earning also as myself. Then to speed this whole thing, I'm trying to explain that I have a motto that has been working. I think it's useful for anybody, that institutionalizing the individual as well as individualizing the institutional. And there is the crucial moment to again bring people together. What that is in real life, in our operations, that's another thing. I would be happy somebody else among us to hear how this kind of philosophical beauty is then brought into the reality.
I like what you said, Aya, that institutionalizing the individual and individual.
I think.
Yes, I think it's an amazing thing if this happens. There will be a lot of handshakes which will take place, and DNA will be one.
Right. Yeah.
And I also like the word dialogue, because that is something, the key everywhere in every organization. So can you share some various ways that can be established in some innovative way?
From the association point of view, I think at least a minimum requirement for me who works for a big community is to create partnerships.
Okay.
Whatever. I think a minimalistic MOU is a bridge for the next generation to continue when I'm gone. That there is a tool, a mechanism, people come and go like in businesses, but then that there is a bridge created for the next generation to reactivate the understanding if it's gone for a while, that people have forgotten this opportunity exists, the partnership. But then if it's created, I'm not a boring accountant, but anyway, that there is something concrete in the hands of people to go over. And I mean, for me, I do dare to go anywhere.
Very true. Oh, loved it. Okay, my next question is, love the way you say reimagining the word without silos and you're building the youth that's futuristic. What's your experience in that area?
Again, I think this dialogue was mentioned that we can't create anything without scanning the environment and being a forerunner to understand what should be, for instance, taught, what should be researched, and also being responsible that all these outcomes, especially in research, are shared. And with this kind of, not so that a research outcome is kept as a key performance indicator for a university, but like it's also very carefully shared that we can then, for instance, at schools or kindergartens, these guys could be using these outcomes and share these things. And there's always a guy in the class or in the group that has good DNA to take this over and continue. Yeah, but dialogue is the only thing I trust myself.
Very true. Yeah, the DNA also is really special and it has to be worked upon this way. It's fantastic insight. Thank you so much.
So, can you just tell us that while you are traveling across, you said you're traveling to India, you're traveling to many countries.
Yes.
So, what is the purpose? What is
the line is a little bit bad, but for example, this January, our association partners with design weeks, like in Ahmedabad was held the first design week in Gujarat. And I was there with my colleague from Interaction Designers Association, and we were also holding a PRE called workshop to bring people, academia, students, industry, business life together to discuss about their understanding what is design, what is needed in education, industry, what they need from education, that we are not educating unemployed students for it. For instance, this was an issue in our workshop in Ahmedabad as an example of dialogue leading to a development. Or in Jaipur, I continued there that they are preparing a design declaration, whatever that might be. But for me, it's like a bridge, like a MOU for the whole society in the region to value the strong arts and crafts there, to be used further for any advancement.
Okay, wow.
Interesting. Okay, my next question goes to Yusuf. Why you call your work human CRM and how this thought originated? We are curious to know that.
Okay, so before I actually start screen sharing based on your the other questions which I would like to go through, it's a very interesting question about the human CRM. It's actually something, I mean, most people who know me on LinkedIn and in personal life, you all will know that I live, breathe, and bleed relationships. I always have. I love being in front of people. I love connecting with the intention to provide value in some way to everyone I connect with. And interestingly, I was actually on one of the podcasts which I was invited to last year by a good friend of mine from Melbourne called Elizabeth Lim. And during our conversation, an hour and a half long conversation on the podcast, she basically said that, Joe, you love connecting one person to the other. You are the human CRM. So that's where the human CRM came in. So it's not something which has been there for a really long time. It's been there for approximately about a year and a half or so at this present moment. But it's something which really sort of caught my attention, and it's something which resonates with me very deeply, because I do value the relationships that I have with others around me. And I think it just brought on a really interesting hashtag which I use nowadays. Very recently I've started using it officially as a human CRM. So thank you for asking the question, Charu. It's an interesting one.
Thanks for the wonderful answer. It's good to know. So you handle the international client portfolio at a large scale and into various business complexities. Is it really possible to follow all the values? And how can a leader avoid crossing over the value line? Share your insights, please.
Very, very interesting. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen. So please let me know if y'all can actually see it. Okay, so I am going to. Can y'all see my screen at all?
Yes.
Okay, I
We can
need.
see, yeah.
Okay, great. One second. Let me see. Okay, so I'm just going to go back a little bit into what John and Aya actually mentioned. John mentioned something along the lines of it's so important for a leader to care. I'm going to bring that in a bit later, but I'm going to actually start with this aspect of value creation, which basically lies in exactly this wonderful quote by Brian Solis, which Aya actually touched upon when she said that individuals are becoming, institutionalized, and institutions are becoming more, individualizing themselves. So, and that's so important. Like, people are becoming brands, and the best response for brands are to become people. I'm going to just explain this a little bit. And I'm a big believer of this, and especially with what's going on at this present moment where the entire world is at a pause. It is so important for senior leaders in any organization to focus on how they are communicating their aspects, their vision, their mission, their purpose to their target audience. Take, for example, I'm gonna name 4 leaders who basically their brands are known because of them. Let's start with the late Steve Jobs and Apple, Jack Ma and Alibaba, Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, and Sir Richard Branson, obviously Virgin. Like, these are people who have basically individualized their brands based on themselves. And that is exactly what people should try and focus on, and especially leaders should focus on. They should try and focus on the value that they are bringing to others around them. And that is the most important aspect which everyone should focus on if they are a senior leader, if people look up to them. So what do I mean by that? So let me just go in a little bit, into this little slide presentation which I have prepared. So, I mean, value is something which obviously needs to include everyone from your internal employees to your external consumers. And that includes obviously the senior decision makers, because they hold the pathway to basically ensuring that each and everything works in the way it needs to. So it obviously does include all the aspects that you see on your screen. I'm not going to elucidate one by one or elaborate on it. But what I'm going to go into is what John said regarding care, how important senior leaders need to actually care for what they are doing, care for people around them. And this is something which a lot of people who know me would know that I use this acronym CARE very, very frequently, which basically stands for connect, it stands for appreciate, it stands for relate, and it stands for engage. Now, what do I mean by that? So, especially in this context of a B2B or a B2C space, it is so important for you, when you're actually talking about who you are and what you do as a person, as an individual, or as a company, to being able to connect meaningfully with the product. You need to know your products, and only then you'll be able to market it to your target market in the most effective manner. You need to be able to connect meaningfully with the intention to provide value. The appreciate part is the most important part, in my opinion, because that's where a lot of people miss out on basically turning a deaf ear to the feedback that they are receiving from the pitch that they are providing to others around them, to their target market. And that is where it is so important, after you receive that feedback, to be able to personalize the offering that you give to your target market and educate them on the actual benefits, rather than just the services and all the other little aspects. You need to personalize it and educate them on the benefits of the service, the product that you're actually providing. And that's where that relate aspect comes in. And lastly, obviously, it is the engage element, where you need to be a client partner to ensure that there is a win-win situation that you are providing to each and every person that you are sharing your views with. So the thing about value, though, and this is something which is a little bit up in the air for a lot of people, because people don't quite understand as to what kind of value they have and how to promote that. What I'm going to say, that with every entrepreneur or every business, it is so important to put yourself out there. You could have the best product or the best service possible, but if you do not portray it, if you do not show people who you are, what you do, what's the value add that your product has on your competitors in your market space, there is no point. There is no point at all, because people will not know who you are. So you need to, and I dislike using the word hustle, but you need to promote yourself, and you need to show people as to why you hold a strategic differentiator to other people in your space when it comes to professional offerings. So now hold on to this acronym of CARE, because the only way you can actually provide real value in a real world context is another little acronym which I use called caretaker. Now, it sort of expounds on that initial care element. So what does it mean? So obviously the first is connect. You need to connect with the client's real requirements, and that is the most important. You need to appreciate and recognize the concerns that they have in real time, and then provide a solution. The most important part, obviously, you've got to relate to a client's revenue and bottom line to negotiate a win-win situation for both of you, because obviously no one's doing it, for nothing. There is obviously, you'd like to make money out of it, and you'd like to ideally provide a benefit from the investment that your client has put into either your product or your service. The engage element is very important, because you need to make sure that you have the decision makers, the board members, on board with what they want. You need to work in alignment with their vision and help build customizable solutions. The T and the taker part from the care is where it is so important, especially in today's world. So you need to show a person, when you are an external consultant to any company, or you're working within an environment where you're a senior business leader in an MNC, you need to be able to ensure that the internal processes that you're having conform to industry-wide standards. Then you also need to make sure that you are not just pitching ideas, just left, right, and center, without making sure that there is feasibility with the budget which has been accorded for it. And what is the timeline that is required? KYC processes, very, very important to adhere to local regulatory requirements, depends from industry to industry, country to country, of course. I come from a financial planning and an accounting and auditing background, so KYC to me is very, very important. And again, the second E is very similar to the engage, but it goes a little bit further in, because you have to encourage feedback. You have to ask, how you're doing. And that is the most important process, especially if you want to repeat purchases and if you want to repeat customer loyalty. You have to encourage your customer to come back to you with what they feel has been valuable or has been a value add from your end to them. And that is the only way you can do it. And last but not the least, which unfortunately I'm going to bring this situation in, which the whole world is facing at the moment, where we've gone into a pause, where so many countries and so many companies rather around the world are failing, is because they didn't have a proper risk and a succession plan within the organization to basically alleviate and help them weather this storm of maybe 2 or 3 months at this present moment, where we are seeing companies collapsing and closing down who have been, who've been around the world for tens of years, and they have not had that proper risk business continuity planning done properly. So it's so important to be a proper client partner that you need to be a caretaker, because only if you're a caretaker, and this comes from both a professional aspect as well as a personal aspect, it comes from whether you're an external consultant or whether you're working within a company in a senior managerial or a decision-making position, you need to be a caretaker in every aspect that you do. And that is the most important in my opinion. So thank you once again. I hope that may have been able to address some of the question that Charu, you asked me regarding the value proposition that everyone, or rather a leader, should hope to always imbue himself, in all his actions to his target audience. So, please connect with me if you're not connected on LinkedIn. And it's an absolute pleasure to be a part of Bringle Academy. So thank you once again.
That's a brilliant share, Yusuf. And if we start dealing with our clients in such mindful way, I think the whole concept of marketing and branding, everything will change. So it's a fantastic share you have shared with us. Thank you so much for that. And I really love the word personalize and value sharing. So that can create a big change if we as marketers and we as company owners start doing that for our clients. Really, it's a fantastic sharing. Thank you so much for that. Rashi, you want to highlight something?
Welcome.
Yeah, so
Ansha was actually asked a question. Sorry. Go on, Rashi.
So there are some questions, come up.
So we can have
John,
the question answers.
John,
Question answer
John.
session now.
So there are questions, John, for you. This is from Ansha. Can we measure intangible outcomes when it comes for value generation, especially when it comes with human expressions like ego?
Good question.
This whole thing of tangible and intangible is it's simple and yet complicated. If we look at tangible, we're really talking about not just things we measure, but things that we feel and things that we observe. So when we talk about the tangible, we tend to think about the measurable things, the performance of the business. But I think that the main intangible and how it impacts the world is how we perform as individuals. And I think that one of the things that Aya mentioned about, the need to change our DNA, I think we're a few decades away from that, but I get the point. And I think that what we need to take personal responsibility for is learning to rewire our own brains proactively. We shouldn't just wait for experience to let that happen, but we should learn to think about how can we rewire our own brain. And we're doing it all the time, often subconsciously, like when we learn to drive a car or when we learn to swim or ride a bike or whatever. But what I'm saying is that we need to learn to rewire our brains so that we behave differently, so that we become more empathetic. As Yusuf was saying when he was talking about the relate bit. One of the key things around that is empathy, and we can all learn to be more empathetic. If you say to somebody, you need to be more empathetic, it's a kind of a difficult thing to get hold of. But if you break that down into granular behaviors and you say, first of all, we need to listen attentively. Well, everybody can do that if they really want to. We can learn to feed back what we've heard. We can all do that. We can also investigate what is the purpose behind what they're saying. We can do that. and we can also feed back that we understand what somebody is saying. So when we break these behaviors down into granular bits, we can really learn to do things differently. And that's where I would suggest that, you know, we all start and continue, is looking at those granular behaviors that we could change. And our research over 15 years now shows that most leaders, if they identify 2 or 3 granular behaviors, it will have a huge impact on their performance, both as a leader and as a human being.
But then how
John,
to
you have brought up a very important point out here. And specifically, I think all the 3 speakers today have kind of brought in 3 different varieties. Now, John, specifically what you have mentioned is more about internal customer. I mean, we call that as, everybody call them as internal customer, which is your employees, which is our leadership. And there is one very strong factor or strong, one methodology which we have been adopting in most of the organizations is employee feedback, employee satisfaction survey, which we call as. So my question to you is that most of the times when we do that employee satisfaction survey, how strongly are we really following the outcomes out of it? How strongly we are accepting the truth which is coming in that? Because be it a large or a small organization, there is always a, I know, Joseph, you don't like word hustle, but everybody is hustling or trying to prove something out of there, and trying to do the best out of it. And in that, there would be some, what do you say, kind of interactions which may not be very good. So from a leader's point of view, how are they actually able to accept, and what is the reason that they're not able to accept sometimes the critical feedback and the negative one specifically?
Well, I think that the most important emotion that we all feel that stops that is fear. You have to provide a safe environment so that people feel that they can talk openly without fear of, being demoted or fired or shouted at or whatever. So I think fear is the most insidious emotion as well. We all fear all the time, and it's not, we're not, in today's world, we're not afraid of, being attacked by a tiger or something like that. But we are afraid of what people think about us, how we will be judged. And so one of the things that is really core to all this is for individuals to develop their own inner self-confidence, because then you can ask the question, okay, so what's the worst thing that can happen? Okay, I can be shouted at. Okay, so I go and get another job. But I think that one of the questions you asked right at the beginning was about internally, thinking about internally, but it's equally important externally. I mean, I spent many of my early years in sales, and using emotional intelligence in sales is just as important as it is, with your colleagues at work. But what I see in many salespeople is that they're actually very good when they're with customers, but they forget all that emotional intelligence when they come back into the office. And other people are the other way around. They're good with their people, but they don't know how to sell. Well, it's the same emotional intelligence. And why the emotional intelligence drops off in certain places is because of people's lack of self-confidence or fear. So
you're right, John, and so I've actually kept purposefully the concept of external customer little different, little separate right now, because I was about to ask that question to Joseph. But Yusuf, I'll just come back to you. Yeah. Okay, so I have this question to you, is specifically from the academic world. And because you come from an academia, and you see a lot of, and also from the social organization. So both these areas, or institutions, are basically dominant by human personality, and there is a learning aspect out of it. What are the typical KRAs or KPIs which we kind of monitor in these organizations to see how they're doing, and what quality level they are in. And especially when we all know that Finland is an education leader when it comes to the demonstrating that leadership with respect to knowledge.
Mm. Yeah, I would like to start the dialogue so that who is measuring us? Can anybody talk about quality in academia, or how we are serving the surroundings, environment, the whole society? Who sets up these key performance indicators? Is there an element, like John was saying, fear again, that the institution educating the excellent next generation, by whom they are dictated, how much is allowed the individual freedom of a professor together with the students, and further how the academics can collaborate with the industry and business life. So the key performance indicators, as an example from Finland, we after the Lehman Brothers collapse and the years thereafter, I mean, our government, of course, in dialogue with universities, has set up as one of the top performance indicators research. So it also dictates the universities. I'm not talking about universities of applied sciences that have a little bit different role to educate people for industry and business life, but then the role of universities is heavily focused on research and outcomes. Okay, we might get confused because universities have also like bachelor level education. So what is the element of research there, etc., etc. So who dictates the key performance indicators is a question to everybody. Should these be built up together with not only inside the academic institution, but in collaboration, in dialogue with others, so that the outcomes that the graduates get employed and they serve the society the best way they can. I had something else in my mind, but let me come back to that later. Finland, yeah, is recognized as an excellent country with the outcomes from education and developing the community. I think it's also, we are a very stable country politically. We have a neutral long history. So I think this has been creating a very good environment from kindergarten, from the birth to retirement, and after that even keep people serving, not only then isolating at home. But
Yeah.
the key one thing about key performance indicators, that if the university is owned by private stakeholders, then the question is, do they maintain the university for their own economic success, or if the university is still though run as a foundation, as a non-profit institution. So there are many differences world around. Why do we have universities? And one question further, do we need to have universities? What would be the alternative educational model, like experts or whoever we are sitting together and discussing, and then the audience is picking up relevant things for their own further advancement processes?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think you've brought up some important key points, especially from the research angle point of view. And I think I've been actually reading about the philosophy, the way Finland universities works, or the education system, that they provide the environment and the children kind of students learn on their own over there. There is no forced curriculums or examinations as such out there.
Yes, there are, yeah, but the compared to when I was at school, so my children, how they are educated, for instance, at high school, it's a lot more different. They can choose themselves, build up their own curriculum, as they quite nicely can do that at any university level institution. So there's the freedom and also listen to the individual, not fully institutionalized. So they have their own responsibility to listen to what they can and what they want. But it's not totally free. I mean, we have to listen to professors, for instance, what they will be giving us. But then, as we all know, having studied at the universities, there's professors also milk out new knowledge, new creativity.
Sure. So I think we will have some detailed conversation on this offline. With this, I would, thank you so much for your insights. Yusuf, I have one question. I'm actually trying to modify my question a bit right now after all
Sure,
the,
go ahead.
understanding I've got. So Rajshri, I'm just taking up this question right now. So Yusuf, my question earlier was basically from a tangible outcomes perspective when it comes to human relationship. And John has brought up a very important point of emotional intelligence, which is going to be very, very important. I mean, as he says, both for internal as well as external customers. My question to you is that you have defined a very, good acronym, which is CARE. Now, when it comes to value, how do we quantify value when it comes to customers? How do customers quantify that yes, they are seeing value in the product or service which we are delivering?
It's a very, very good question. And I would just like to go back to just one word, which is feedback. So, and the feedback element is the most important. Like when you as a service provider or a solutions provider, you're actually providing some of your inputs into trying to solve a situation for your client. You need to make sure that you are actually listening with the intention to understand rather than with the intention to just reply. And that's where active listening becomes so important, which is the precursor, or which is the first step of being able to basically being able to understand and appreciate the feedback that you're getting back from your audience in the second step, so to speak. So the value aspect, especially for a tangible outcome element, it is very, very important for both sides to being able to openly communicate and openly sort of appreciate what the other person's trying to put forth, and then share feedback with each other. Because there have been so many occasions, and I'm sure John and Ayo are going to, and all the other esteemed panelists in today's discussion are going to agree with me. We have all been in situations where there have been, like, you are speaking one language, but the person who you're actually conveying it to is actually interpreting it in a completely different manner. And that's where you have to ask leading questions. You have to understand, you have to open those doors of communication per se, where you will basically need to understand whether you are all on the same page. And that's the only way tangible outcomes in any kind of a client and a provider relationship will be in will come into fruition.
Very nicely explained, Yusuf, and I think I loved your concept of explanation of active listening, because whatever feedback you take, whatever amount of connect you make with your customer, be it internal or external, if you are not actively listening, it is not going to make any sense, and you'll keep justifying what you have. Brilliantly explained. Rajshri, do we have any other questions?
Yes, I have observations as usual and my experience. So, all three put together, in fact. The day I left my corporate job, the last day I went to my HR head, and he debriefed me, and at the end he gave me a intricately carved elephant, ivory elephant. I treasure it for various reasons. He told me that I was the elephant of the organization, and uh, the 6 qualities that I had will be, the organization will be bereft of those qualities from that day on. So he listed those 6 qualities. One, that I was a listener. Listener because the elephant listens with their feet, not the vibrations of the earth are uh, uh, of, are taken up as uh, feedback. Second, the intelligence. Third, the elephant memory. Fourth, the strength, the mental strength that he says I have. Fifth was a surprise for me. I was gentle with people, even with the ones who had not been very nice with me. And sixth was fearless. Yes, I don't know fear. That is true. These 6 qualities, well, what he says represents the elephant. That was me. And the elephant was going away, and uh, the organization had lost a large part of its, I don't know how to put it. Uh, it's a very different feeling that I got, because that was the first time I got this feedback that I had been valued so highly, and they never told me until the last day.
So, by the way, Sharmila, I mean, kudos to you. And, we all can say that these all 6 qualities definitely belongs to you. So, I can
No,
really say that from my
gentleness, I
experience.
still don't have that with me, but yeah, okay.
I think
So,
you're being modest. So, but yeah, thanks. Just for the people, everybody's, perspective, just to give an introduction, Sharmila is the CEO and co-founder at Bringle. She's also the managing director for our CSR wing, Vivardhan Association, where she works on a lot of aspects on disability and, social environmental issues as well. Uh, she's a cerebral palsy patient for the last 50 years, but she cannot be termed as inability, and I think that is how the word coined. Disability is not inability. Uh, so kudos to you, Sharmila, and I think Yusuf had been wanting to have a live session with you for a long time. We'll come back to our next question from Pooja. Rachni, would you want to read that out?
Yeah, so Pooja's question is value-based leadership. How can one ensure this in pandemic or for Yusuf? This question is for Yusuf. Value-based leadership. How can one ensure in this pandemic? Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a very, very good question, and this is
Great
actually
question.
something which we discussed in detail in my LinkedIn Live, which I had earlier today. It's so important. And again, I'm going to take it back to that active listening skills, right? Where, especially in today's world, we have to understand, especially from a leadership perspective, we have to understand that each and every person, wherever they are in the world, we are all facing some kind of trouble at this present moment. Every single person in this world is affected. There is no one who is not affected. And that's where it is so important, especially during this time, that companies or leaders are very, very choosy about what they, or about how they sort of, how they express themselves. The reason why I'm saying this is it is so important to ensure that empathy, kindness, and compassion are at the forefront at everything that a senior leader, especially at this time, is putting forward to their audience. I think Mark Cuban, if I'm not mistaken, actually did a show with Fox or with Sky News a couple of weeks ago in the US, where he said that the companies and the leaders in those companies who are actually empathetic, who are compassionate, and who are actually listening to the feedback that their target audience is providing to them, and then actioning those steps to try and make some kind of a difference to society at large, are the companies which are actually going to be far ahead of those which are just sitting back and waiting for things to tide over. And I think that is where, I think, in my opinion, to answer Pooja's question, and it's a very important question, especially during this pandemic, it is so important that one needs to ensure that empathy is at the forefront in any interaction and communication with everyone around you.
Yeah, I think.
Hope that answers.
Yeah, that has actually answered it. I was on mute. Rajshri, I think if you want to call off Pulse of Wisdom, or should I thank you? You complete
Money.
Pulse of Money is doing it?
Money is doing
okay,
it. Yeah.
So Money, you there?
Hi, I'm here. Yeah, I was on mute. I was listening. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks everyone for sharing the valuable insights. I actually keep taking the notes of all the speakers as they keep sharing valuable insights. And today I started noting it down, and I actually created a value story. Let me unfold this to you. How it actually happened. Okay, I start with John's explanation of how transpersonal leaders have to be more radical, ethical, authentic, caring, and sustainable so that they can manage their emotions and egos. And they always should have asked a very important question: what is the benefit from me? And think of all the stakeholders. That's when organizations will go very far and create a strong transpersonal leaders. And I was happy with that introduction, and I could actually take to a couple of pages on that. And I was still writing on that. And then we have Ia started sharing more on how do you make it a community, more of a transpersonal leader into a community role. So when we got into the community, there were a lot of aspects that were discussed, and I was noting it down. And the first thing that really she told us, like, do dare to do things in spite of frameworks. So whoever can do or take this one will actually do a lot. And then weakness, the biggest weakness she highlighted in a community or organization or whatever, is not enough dialogue. So we need to talk, we need to meet, and we should not be arrogant. At the same time, we have to value everybody within the organization. So this is the key. And I also like the way she put two things side by side, like institutionalization of individual in philosophy versus individualization of institution in real life is a key game changer. And not to the least, creating partnership is the minimalistic bridge for next generations to take to the next level. And with this, I was actually trying to note a lot of other pointers, and that's when we come to the conclusion of the story with a human CRM, which is from Joseph. And Joseph actually brings a clarity on what could be a human CRM. I've been thinking of CRM more on the technological side, but yes, there could also be a human CRM, which is very interesting to know the essence of human relationships and ability to connect people. This what actually makes a human CRM. And he also gives us further tips on how you can actually build your own. One is to be care, understand care, and then be the caretaker so that your human CRM is complete. And on top of that, he also goes on stressing, make active listening part of your feedback. So what else we need to complete the story? That's all for the Pulse of Wisdom today. Thank you. This is Mani, founder of SolveWorks. I'm signing off. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderfully, nicely explained, Mani.
Yeah.
And I think
Lovely.
that's how it's coming out the real pulse of wisdom. So you actually picked up the right pulse and actually created an entire story, and I would say a necklace around that,
Very
Yeah,
true. Very
I
true.
wanted to start write something, but it sounded to me like a complete value story. So I was mesmerized with the entire discussion. Thank you.
No, I think Mani, we should also give credit to our panelists today, who have done a wonderful job in explaining such a difficult topic, especially when it comes to outcomes related to relationships, people, and things. And I think each of John was explaining about emotional intelligence, how it is important for both internal and external customers, how yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I missed out this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So,
Whatever.
I'm really sorry. I didn't want to do this. uh, uh, and how she was mentioning about the need of social organization, the educational institutions, and with the follow up with the best quote of, I love the way the acronym caretaker has kind of evolved, and then finally with the active listening part. So I think it's a perfect complete story, right from inside out to outside in, kind of thing. So, and brilliantly crafted or drafted by you, Mani. Thanks for that. With this, I would like to thank, I'll just share the screen again for the today's speakers. I would like to thank Radio Must Be 24/7 Singapore, who has been publishing daily Pulse of Wisdom on their live show. You can tune in to Radio Must Be 24/7 iOS or Android application, and they are the only Hindi radios as speaking channel across Southeast Asia today. I would also want to thank Charu, who is our who is leading who is the founder of Women Lines, who is our community partner. I would like to thank Sharmila, who is who is running Vardhan as a social impact partner. I would like to thank Bhavesh Kothari, who is running an organization called Millennium Divas as an ecosystem partner. Thanks to Mani, and he's the founder of SolveWorks and working as a startups partner with us. Poonam Foundation, thanks Rajshri for being there as a gender neutrality partner. LAC Wealth and PPO Club are financial partner and real estate services partner. Uh, ICX Pro is our business networking partner, and consulting partner is PMC. With this, I would also want to specifically thanks Joseph, Saib, Yusuf, John, and Iya for spending their valuable time, and they could find out some time for us and sharing their pulse of wisdom across the globe. And again, thanks to all the participants, viewers, collaborators, supporters who has been there with us to make sure that we are there on what I think 15th day of 21 days business sustainability challenge. So thanks to all. And with this, I would say thank you so much once again. Do upload your pitch decks at bringleacademy.com/course/business sustainability. If you're an entrepreneur, business owner who are looking for funds, we are bringing up a live pitching week with our cross-border investors. We have extended the timelines, so please keep submitting your pitch decks. we have a long way to go, and we would want to support at best whatever we can in these tough times. And we want more and more businesses to grow. Thank you so much. And with this, I would say keep bringing, keep growing.
Thank you so much to our speakers. It was
Thank
such an
you.
enlightening session. Thank you. Stay safe,
Thank you,
everybody. Take
everyone.
care.
Yes. Take care.
Take
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
care.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.